On today's episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we had on an awesome guest. We had on the Vice President of Business Operations for Toronto FC and the Toronto Argos, Chris Shewfelt, and he also serves as a SPMA Course Instructor for SPMA 2P21 Organizational Behavior in Sports Organizations. This was such an amazing conversation that I usually start with, we talked about this important point, but there's just too many to name. So before I keep talking on and be a complete spoiler, just to give you a quick overview on what we talked about. We talked about his involvement with SPMA 2P21 as an instructor, what motivated him to be a course instructor, and how he interacts with the students in his class. We talked about how he's navigated his teams with TFC and the Argos during the pandemic. We had an awesome discussion on leadership with regards to how to be a great leader, what makes a great leader, and the continued importance of personal branding. And we also talked about the great foundation that MLSE LaunchPad is as well. Everything is an awesome point of conversation, and I encourage you to listen to the whole interview because there really is something for everyone, regardless of what your areas of interests are. So again, I want to thank Chris sincerely for coming onto the show and taking the time to chat with us and have an awesome conversation. But before we get to the preview and then the interview, a quick message that's being passed on from Darren Arnold, who's a friend of the podcast. He was a guest back in season 1 of the show, and he currently works for Primetime Sports and Entertainment. And if you're looking for a great professional development opportunity, a chance to hear from industry pros, and a chance to network, then look no further than the 14th annual Primetime Sports and Entertainment Conference presented by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, being held on November 14th to 16th at the Westin Harbour Castle Hotel in Toronto. Hear from great panels discussing pressing topics in sport today, such as overcoming the pandemic, developments in sport media, diversity and inclusion, and the explosion of esports, amongst others. Speakers attending include Brian Burke, Tyler Taminia of the Premier Hockey Federation, Mike Moriali of the Canadian Elite Basketball League, Carolyn Cameron of Sportsnet, and even our guest for this episode, Chris Shewfelt, and much more. And for the first time, Primetime Sports and Entertainment will have a career fair on the Monday. And this is an awesome chance to not only network, but to build your brand and get yourself out there in front of a number of sport organizations. If you're interested in attending, please visit www.primetimesport.ca/registration, and it will also include this link down in the description as well. Additionally, if you need more information, please visit www.primetimesport.ca for more information, or follow them on Twitter at PrimetimeSE. Again, that's www.primetimesport.ca or on Twitter at PrimetimeSE. Well, let's get to the latest episode of the show and our conversation with Chris Shewfelt. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is the SPMA Council Podcast. How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. And you know what time it is. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back, and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPMA Council Podcast. I hate the predate episodes, but we're on reading break. So I just came off a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend at my farm. Lots of turkey and lots of pie. And pumpkin and apple pies to be specific. So definitely not the way I eat on a daily basis. But Thanksgiving weekend, it was a great weekend to get some R&R. But from wherever you are, I hope your reading break was good to you, and you're somewhat ready to kick off the second week of of first semester. Co-hosting this episode with me, back at for another kick of the can, our podcast administrator Maddy Grossi. Maddy, how's it going?
Good. Well, thanks for having me again. And same like you, I had lots of turkey, lots of pie, but it's only like once or twice a year we can do that without feeling guilty. So I enjoyed every minute of it.
Other than Thanksgiving and pie, what are the other Thanksgiving staples in the Grossi household?
Oh, stuffing and mashed potatoes have to
That'll
be
be.
there.
That'll
And
be.
my mom makes a really good cauliflower and broccoli with cheese sauce. And it is pretty
Interesting.
darn good. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, with me, it's pretty much the same thing. But it always ends up with my nana making desserts, and us telling her, oh, we don't you don't have to, I think we're covered, but she brings them in, but she brings it anyway, on top of the date squares and the cookies that we have as well. So let's just
Never
say,
have too much dessert.
I might have paid for it the day later, but I mean, but that was a future me problem,
Yeah.
not a Thanksgiving me problem. But anyway, on the more serious matters, we had Chris Shewfelt, the VP of Business Operations for TFC and the Argos, and a current course instructor here at Brock. He teaches 2P21 organizational behavior in sports organizations. Unbelievable conversation. I'm not sure where to start. So, Maddy, what were some of the highlights from the conversation? Although there were a
Many.
long list of them, without spoiling anything, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Chris is my professor, or sorry, course instructor for 2P21. So it was great to have him on. I learned a lot from him each week. So I think the biggest things that I pulled out from it, and why we had him on the show, was to talk about leadership, to talk about personal brand and how you portray yourself to others, how others will remember you. I think that's super important. Characteristics of a great leader, how to be a leader within a team. He talks a lot about that stuff, and how important it is for the sports industry, and whatever role you're in, it doesn't matter if you are in the highest role or the lowest role, you can always make an impression on anyone in your organization.
And we're getting where I think, like, beyond the industry knowledge, we're remembering this episode as, highlighting someone that is committed to lifelong learning and giving and giving back.
Absolutely, yeah.
You see that from his philosophy as a course instructor, which I think is fantastic. And the work that he does with MLSE LaunchPad. There's a bunch of initiatives that they do, and a framework that they use to set up those who access it for success in in life functions that we may take for granted, which is such a good thing. Also, a great conversation on leadership and aspects on how to be a good leader, and personal branding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mentioned that before, but he talks a lot about that stuff, and there's definitely something that each one of you can pull from this and reflect back on, and maybe think about what type of leader you are and what your personal brand is. So we hope you enjoy the episode for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I think if we talk more about this, it's going to become a gigantic spoiler once the audience listens. So you've heard the preview, but tune into the full interview, and you will not be disappointed. And I think it's time that we throw that over to Chris Shewfelt, VP of Business Operations for the Toronto Argonauts and Toronto FC, and a course instructor in the SPMA program here at Brock. Enjoy, everyone. All right, for this episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we have a very, very distinguished guest with a plethora of experience in the sports industry, the current VP of Business Operations for TFC and the Toronto Argonauts. Prior to that, he was the head of business operations for TFC and senior director of global partnerships in MLSE, and he is a current SPMA course instructor starting this September for SPMA 2P21 organizational behavior. Please welcome SPMA alumnus Chris Shewfelt to the podcast. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Madeline. I appreciate you guys inviting me and having me on the podcast.
No problem. And it's setting up to be an excellent show. We're going to start off with the de facto first word of the SPMA Council podcast. Chris, what mindset have you adopted to forge a successful career?
Well, my career's I've been 20 years at MLSE, and before that I was, I think I was the fourth year in the sport management program at Brock from when it first came into existence. So I've been able to work, between my time at Brock and in the sports industry now for over 20 years, 24 years or so. And it's been a lot of fun. I look back on it and I think about, what's made me successful, or what, those certain times in my career where I think, okay, it's going pretty well. For me, it's been about hard work and really recognizing that in order for me to break through, one of the easiest things for me, and what I was always taught at a young age, was to work hard. But I've come to realize over that time that hard work involves a lot more than just putting your head down and running through walls and getting everything done. You need to be able to embrace change at the right moments in time and recognize that nothing is certain within an organization. You're going to have new bosses, you're going to have new leaders, or you're going to have new opportunities come your way. Taking calculated risks has been important for me along the way, recognizing when I needed to jump to a new opportunity within our company. That's certainly helped me along the way. And then just being a self-starter, taking that initiative yourself and recognizing that, yeah, we're operating as part of a team dynamic, and together as a team, we're going to succeed and achieve our goals. But in order for yourself to break through, really taking initiative and making sure you're chasing your goals, chasing those dreams down, because you're the only one that can really control that along the way. So I always say hard work will pay off. There's a lot more that goes into it than just that hard work.
Mm-hmm. No, totally agree with you there. And I mean, your points on being a self-starter and resilient, and resiliency, like, are more true today than ever before. I mean, we've heard about COVID a million times, but I mean, that is the epitome of resiliency, especially from both an MLSE and a Brock standpoint. MLSE, you look at your clubs. TFC was forced to play in Florida for pretty much all of last season in de facto. I don't know if you would call it like stadiums, but some just like random fields, and the Argos didn't even play last year. So being able to put your head down, being able to go through that and adapt to that climate while ensuring that you're going to be set up for a successful 2021 campaign, which by all accounts, it seems to have been that way. Being resilient can pay dividends, but again,
Yeah,
it does take a lot of sacrifice.
It's not been easy, Will, for sure. I mean, COVID has presented so many challenges for our organization. We had numerous surrogate homes over the last number of years. We played in Hartford, we played in Orlando, we played in Tampa. While we were in Orlando, we played a both Exploria Stadium and then Wide World of Sports over in Disney. So, adaptability has had to be the, key for any sports organization that was going to survive during COVID and during the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, similar factors that we talked about, and how I was successful in my career so far. Yeah, resiliency is important, right? Taking initiative is important. We had to innovate. We had to, we just had to get through.
Yeah. And to go back to your point about working hard, you've talked a lot about in class being the first one in the office and the last one to go. And that really does show when you put in that much effort and into your job and into your organization, because your peers will notice it and it'll make you a better leader in the end. As a previous SPMA grad and now course instructor for 2P21 organizational behavior, what motivated you to want to teach and give back to students who hope to land a job in the sports industry someday soon? Was any of it motivated from your personal values or vision?
Well, there's a number of reasons. The first, if I date back to when I was going through the program, seeing that practical experience come through in the teaching was always something that resonated with me. So I had certain profs that would bring in tremendous guest speakers or people that would connect the industry to education. That part was where I did most of my learning, right? So for me, being able to give back and put that type of learning in place, I think is important. For me, I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I love that part of what I do at work, but also I love coaching baseball, hockey, and then getting back in front of the class has been something that has been exciting to me. I've come back to Brock and participated in different alumni days over the years. I've taught at Ryerson in the past as well with a former Brock professor, Dr. Sherry Bradish. And for me to have the opportunity to teach my own course has been a lot of fun. And as much as I like coaching and developing, whether it's students, whether it's people coming through our organization, when you teach, there's a tremendous amount of learning that goes along with it as well. So as I'm going through this journey, I'm pushing myself to learn even more, to read even more, to bend the way that I think, and everything that I know certainly has the opportunity to build on and reestablish some of the ways that I think. And some of the guests that I've already brought in this year, I've learned and taken different things from each one of them that have come along the way. So for me, it's about career development myself and learning and continual learning. And people always have to be curious, right? And always have to want to push themselves outside of their comfort zones as well. And the last thing I'll say is, COVID took a lot of us out of the in-person game for a while, right? We weren't in front of people. I wasn't leading meetings. I wasn't in front of, people up here at work or clients. You're doing everything virtual. So getting back in the classroom certainly gets me in front of people. It's a big class as well. And it's always good to sharpen your game when you're in front of people, presentation skills, everything that goes along with that.
Yeah, and I'd say I personally really enjoy our class, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but I do enjoy the discussion piece of it, because a lot of classes I find I'm not necessarily the person who can just write notes for 3 hours and go home and say that I've learned something. I really benefit from discussion and hearing other people's opinions and talking about things. And I think we do that every class. And I think I really benefit from that. And we use real life examples and hear from people in the sports industry. So I really like that type of learning style. And I think it helps students a lot.
That part's not lost to me, Madeline, because, everybody learns differently. Mm-hmm. And from my experiences in the past, or even going into different meetings, I think I mentioned to the students last class that I have to write everything down, when I'm listening. I probably don't go back to it and look at it that often, but for me, when I write it down, it helps stick, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's hearing someone present whether it's a TED Talk, whether it's a journal article. My goal is to bring all these different learning strategies and teaching strategies into the classroom, because everybody does learn differently, and you have to respect that and recognize that as well. So those varied learning environments, I think, are important.
100%. And I really love that that philosophy that you have as a course instructor. Open mindset, open to literally any new information to benefit your students. And I think I think over my 4 years at Brock, that's been a common theme for any of the professors or instructors that I've had, where I can look back and said, man, that was a really great course, and if I could take it again, I would. Switching gears to your duties with MLSE, in your current role as VP of Business Operations for TFC and the Argos, how would you say you've been able to navigate through COVID and motivate your team?
Yeah, it's been extremely difficult because we've obviously been at distance, right? So, I'm in my office right now, so we're just called back within the last couple of weeks. But we love to be around each other. It's a home, it's a family up here. I work at the BMO training ground, which is where TFC trains on a daily basis. So when you're not in front of people, and it was over 18 months we were at distance, it was very difficult. Right? You lose that sense of connectedness and family and seeing people. So you have to figure out ways of breaking through. For me, it was about communication, and it was making sure that everybody, when I found out information, that I was going to communicate that upwards or downwards, whatever direction it made sense. So making sure that my people were in the loop, even when there was nothing to communicate. We would have I would still have my weekly one-on-ones. I'd still have our weekly full team, business operations meetings where we're updating everybody from the people at 50 Bay Street who work in the sales and marketing teams to everybody who works for me as well. So communication was absolutely key. The other thing that really helped guide through all of this was, recognizing that there's no playbook for this, right? We're all figuring this out and we're all trying to manage this together. So if I need to reach out to a colleague, one of our partners, the people at BMO, to see how they're doing things, or at one of the other teams, Whitecaps, Montreal Impact, one of the leagues that I work with, none of us had a playbook for this, and we were figuring it out on the go. So recognizing that we didn't have all the answers was certainly okay. And then the last thing is everybody had their own personal stories during COVID and their own personal challenges, right? Everybody's got families. Everybody's got different situations, right? Some people had loved ones, partners, husbands, wives that were on the front lines, right, during COVID. So leading with empathy was and is absolutely huge during this pandemic, because recognizing that not everybody's the same as you, and that they have their own certain needs, was a big contributing factor to leading through the pandemic. I don't think any of the leaders would tell you that it was easy or they got everything 100% right. But those who were open and were vulnerable, I would suggest, and recognize they weren't going to have all the answers, they're the ones that did well. They took care of their people first, right? We took care of our people and made sure that our people were in good shape, and that their families were in good shape. That was kind of the guiding light for us.
People first. I mean, apart from open communication, which is clearly a key point to success, I think COVID has sort of not taught us, but brought this issue more to light by saying, you can meet with someone 50 to 100 times in the office, but away from the office, there may be some things going on that you may not know about, and they may not choose to share those events with you. So, you know,
real life happens, right? Well, real life happens, and that's what you have to realize.
Yeah. And you know, recognizing that and being open to it, you know, creates a culture where everyone feels accepted. If, you know, if they need to take a mental health day, then take a mental health day. It's not, you know, it's not the time to just go into the office when you're feeling down, just because, right? And, you know, for me, I sort of share the sentiment where, you know, when you're going back into the office, everyone's a family. I mean, classroom isn't really an office for us students, but, you know, coming back into my first class, it's an 8 a.m. and, you know, I'm seeing some mates that I haven't seen in person for a year and a half. And you know, I'm looking around and it's a full house, and it's the first time, and it was the first time not only seeing a near capacity classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning, but, you know, just seeing those familiar faces, like it was, as the old saying goes, it was like a piano was lifted off my back, and it gave off the feeling of like, this is right. This is how it should be.
Feels normal. Yeah. It feels normal.
100%.
Yeah, well, Will, I mean, you're talking about seeing those faces again, and this year was my first year meeting those faces that I saw online for a year. So I'm happy to be in class and to meet the people that I talked to online for a whole year. It's actually cool because I was walking in the halls the first day with my roommate, and I was going, oh, I think they were in my class, and they were in my class, because you recognize their face, because that's all I saw. But yeah, so we've talked a lot about leadership in class and how to show empathy towards people, and it doesn't always have to be about work. And the best leaders are the ones who care about you, for you, outside of work. So we've talked about how to be a good leader, and we've heard from a lot of great leaders. Can you share the importance of some of the characteristics of how to build effective leaders?
Yeah, it's a journey, right? I've talked to the class about leadership being a journey, and you're not born a great leader, but you take all these different experiences from along the way, and you figure out what can make you the best possible leader, right? And I think in the last class, I said, you know, write down all those things that all the bad leaders have done, and then do opposite. Because oftentimes you learn that way, right? You don't want to fall into some of those traps that maybe some previous leaders had fallen into. And by the way, no one's perfect, and everybody's going through that leadership journey. So that's okay. But hopefully those leaders are recognizing some of the challenges that they have as well, because it is a journey. But when you're talking about developing leaders, I think there's a number of factors that we can talk about. Being that student of leadership that I talked about, right? Recognizing that, you know, as you start to, manage people, right? There's certain ways that you need to manage people, and you shouldn't just be thrown into that situation, right? It should be something that you are prepared for as an individual, but your company should be preparing you for as an individual as well, right? But leadership's just not about managing people, right? Leaders are at all different levels, and you can demonstrate leadership wherever you are within an organization. So for me, when I'm trying to talk to people about leadership, and the first misconception they say to me is, well, I don't have any people reporting to me. Like, that doesn't matter, right? That's whether they report to you or not, you can still show leadership in many different ways, right?
Exactly.
Are you being innovative? Are you being creative? Are you thinking outside of your day-to-day routine, right? Everybody's got these functional roles that their job is made up of, but that's expected of you, right? You're expected to perform the functional roles of your job. That's what you're paid for. Well, what about this other bucket that I would call, leadership? So for me, if I'm developing leaders, I want to make sure I'm empowering people, right? I'm empowering them. I'm giving them the autonomy to figure things out. And that might mean they might succeed, and oftentimes they might fail. But as a leader, I may want to let my people fail a little bit so they can learn, right? And not purposefully or something that's going to be a major detriment to the company, but that's a learning experience, right? I want to give people the autonomy to figure some things out on their own. I want somebody that is presented with a problem in a situation to come to me with a proposed solution, right? Not just ask for the answers, right? So I'd like to listen to a proposed solution, and I think that's really important. I want to be able to have someone that I can coach and develop, and that wants to listen and wants to learn, right? It's very easy for people to get defensive around coaching.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they have all the answers. Well, no one has all the answers, right? I think people just need to be prepared to listen, to absorb, and also as a leader that gives feedback, I appreciate people that will say, will have a conversation or a debate with me along the way and say, you know what, here's what I was thinking when I approached that project this way, and this is the strategy I went down the road with. And Chris, what do you think about this? Did I go the right direction? Did I not? But here was the background as to why I did that, right? They had thought through the process, for example. So as long as there's good discussion and that person talks to you about the strategy of what they were trying to accomplish, I think then a good coaching session can happen. But there has to be two-way communication in order for people to want to be able to be coached. So for me, those are a few different things. And then the last thing I'll say there is, I want to be able to reward and recognize, people as well, because I think at some point along the way, we need to create space between, those that are going to go on and succeed and become future leaders, and those that maybe they won't be great future leaders, right? We have to provide opportunities for those that are going to succeed to advance and to develop. So we need to reward and recognize our top performers as well. And I think that part's really important, specifically in our industry, in lots of industries. But I believe in meritocracy. I believe in people rising and succeeding and earning their way.
Yeah.
So those are a few areas of how I would develop leaders.
I think autonomy is really important, and we talked about that in class. I personally love the idea of that because it was kind of the idea that you're given the space to do something that you wouldn't normally do. A lot of great things or bad things, like you said, could come out of that. And without the ability to take that day to not do your normal job or to come up with new ideas, you might not have some of the great things in your company or new projects or new ideas. So I think that time to just step away and do your own thing is really important for people sometimes.
Yeah, that topic there, Madeline, we talked about, companies or leaders allowing their people the ability to create time that's outside of their normal job, right?
Yeah.
Allow them to think differently, to innovate, to meet with other people that aren't within their department, and what great things can come about. Lots of big companies, tech companies do this frequently. Google, Apple, they're all allowing their people that time in order to curate, to create, to innovate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're leading or if you're conducting leadership aspects, especially if you're in a group. The best scenario if you're a leader is when, you can be delegative and have full confidence that they can get stuff done. It's not that you're ignoring the group per se, but the trust and rapport you've established over time has enabled that situation to happen. And those are another two great characteristics of leaders. From a podcast perspective, I like to think that although we have different roles, host, administrator, social media manager, we all take on the concept of shared leadership, where if we have a concept, if we have an idea, if we have suggestions for guests, we have an open door policy to say their piece and why that should be implemented. And over time, I think all the podcast team members have built that trust to allow that person with the strategy to say, okay, go for it. Show us what you've got. And, it usually leads to fantastic debate and results down the road. I guess to build off our leadership conversation, personal brands are also an important aspect for any leader. How would you encourage students to create a brand that reflects well on themselves?
Yeah, this is something that is extremely important. And, the first thing that I think most people will tell you about personal brand is, are you being authentic and true to yourself, right? So you have to really, understand, what values that you want to portray, but you want to make sure that they're real, right? So for example, what do you care about? Do you care about the community? Do you care about family? Coaching and developing, is that something that's really like, what do you really care about? And then you can help build that personal brand, right? Because a lot of people will build this brand that they want people to see, but is it really true and authentic? So that's something that should always be considered. I think how you present yourself, I think every time you go into whether it's a meeting or whether it's, a personal situation or whatnot, all of those are areas where you're upholding your own personal brand, right? Now, you're not always going to be perfect because things happen in life and your kids are going crazy at you and, something bad happened at work. So, it's maybe not always going to be a true reflection of your exact self that you want to be all the time. But recognizing that whenever you're out in public, that, your personal brand is a big part of you. So I think being authentic when you're developing that personal brand is the first thing that people need to think of. And where those values come into play, who taught you those values, like that's all reflection. I will say that over the years, when I was at school, I learned about personal brand. We talked about that, but it's not always going to be smooth, and you're going to have challenges along the way in your own personal brand. It's about how you can recover as well, and then reground yourself and make sure that you're true to those values.
I agree with that. And for me, I mean, something I used to do in high school, and I never really thought twice about it. It was just who I was. every classroom I walked into, I said good morning or hello or good afternoon, and I walked out and said thank you. And it wasn't really something I thought about, and I just did it. And then every time my peers would recognize it, the teachers would recognize it at parent-teacher interview, and I never really thought about it. I just thought it was nice to say hello, but it's all the little things that you don't really think about that you have to be most aware of, because that's what people will pick up on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can relate that to that. And like in another sense, before COVID hit, for good Lord, how long was I doing it for? From 2015 to 2020. I was the public address announcer for a local charity hockey game in my hometown of Mississauga, and there wasn't there. I'm not sure if there wasn't if there was a previously established dress code or one that I was aware of, but it was always for that the automatic thought that just came into my mind is like, you'd better look good. And I remember walking in like full suit, tie, and and the first time experiencing the production side of that event back in 2015, I'm looking around and it wasn't a joke. It was a professional media company with all their effects, lighting, even their own sound systems. And a few people did compliment me on the suit, which I wasn't expecting. But just doing those little things sets the tone for what you want to, not only what you want to be as a person, but what impression you set off to people the first time that they come across you.
So just on that, Will, so first impressions are vitally important, but one that has to accompany that first impression is, as you have that first conversation, or you talk to somebody as you're getting to know them, what's memorable about you that sticks out to them. So they're going to notice your appearance, they're going to remember your name. Are you having a conversation about family, your kids, coaching, whatever it might be? I think those are all important parts as well, because it kind of sets the tone for the relationship as you move forward, right? So, what is that value add discussion that you have with whoever you're meeting that, again, is authentic and real, and that can resonate? Maybe they remember that as you move forward, and then maybe you remember the exact conversation that you're having with that person for the next encounter that you might have with them.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have those opportunities that we do, that we've just talked about, which takes us into our last question for you. So corporate social responsibility has the ability to affect stakeholders' experiences and lives. MLSE LaunchPad has created a fantastic foundation and platform for CSR. Can you touch on them and the role it plays in the community by providing opportunities for others?
Yeah, whether it's MLSE LaunchPad or various corporate social responsibility programs that our company or other sporting organizations would develop, extremely important part of the culture of an organization. And sports teams, sports clubs are almost expected to have very strong and very deep-rooted CSR programs that connect to the communities specifically with which they operate within. And I think that's the key part. How are you impacting those communities that your organizations are operating within? And for us at MLSE, it's about helping youth facing barriers have access to sport and how sport can help change their lives. And that's what LaunchPad is all about, right? LaunchPad is a built facility that initially works in conjunction with Toronto Community Housing to provide opportunity for those youth facing barrier to play sport, but not only to play sport, but to prepare themselves for life in the workforce or life at school. So our kind of 4 pillars that we measure against is ready for work, ready for school, healthy mind, and healthy body. Right, that's kind of the 4 pillars that MLSE LaunchPad is built around and that we measure against. I think CSR programs are amazing and they've been done for years, yet there's not a lot of data, not a lot of research out there that talks about, you know, what defines success for that CSR program. Are we really making an impact in people's lives? And in our case at MLSE LaunchPad, are we really preparing people for school? Are we really preparing those youth for work? Right? What impact are we having? And then we're measuring that, the impact we're having versus the general population of youth in that specific area of the city, right? We want to be able to determine that we're really making an impact and that these CSR programs are working. So millions of dollars every year are going into, whether it's MLSE LaunchPad or our different MLSE Foundation initiatives. We grant millions of dollars every year from our 50-50 to various groups, to various organizations that focus on developing youth through the power of sport, right? It's a huge grant program, and there's many amazing organizations that are benefiting from the work that we are doing. So I think strong CSR programs are vitally important. I think foundations that run their business appropriately, that are granting the right dollars, that are not spending too much of their money that they're raising. There's some amazing foundations out there and some really great work being done across sport right now. So we're really proud of MLSE LaunchPad and the work that the foundation has done over the years. I think we're trailblazing in that space, specifically with regards to MLSE LaunchPad and the work we're doing around research and measurement as well.
Man, we know we all, most of SPMA students, didn't have like a personal connection to sport, but especially like from my personal standpoint, I don't think I've had an experience where I'm using sport to I guess prepare me for simple life situations that if I didn't have the resource, I would have been, I wouldn't have been sort of well off, or or who knows, or who knows what would happen. But just having that resource available for those youth, to use sport to put them or to set them up to be in a better place. That impact cannot be quantified. And you were looking
sorry,
at,
Will, just to interrupt. I apologize to interrupt there, but
no worries.
You bring up a good point in that our Launchpad is developing not just kids that are getting to play sport, but we're developing those future leaders. A lot of the
Leaders
youth
of tomorrow.
a lot of the youth that have come through our programming at Launchpad, we've trained them to be coaches and we've trained them to be leaders, and they get to actually lead and facilitate the work that's being done there as well. And that's a tremendous benefit of what sport provides, because those youth often don't realize, I mean, most youth don't realize at a young age that they have the ability to coach and to teach others and to develop. But sport and playing sport allows for that. I'm a firm believer that team sports is a great way to develop and to understand who are going to be leaders within an organization eventually.
Right.
I love hiring athletes. We love bringing athletes on board. A lot of athletes that have played team sports have tremendous success within the business world, or athletes in general, right? They know how to endure, to persevere, to work hard towards a common goal, win championships. I think there's a huge overlap as you go into the business world, and specifically in sports also. So whether it's LaunchPad or anybody playing sport, I think there's a good opportunity that you can learn a lot of the skills required to be a leader.
100%. And if anyone wants to know more about MLSE LaunchPad, I encourage every listener to check out the extraordinary things that they're doing on a daily basis. It really is. It's really special to look at the different initiatives and how they're impacting the lives of many. But as we bring the show to a close, and Chris, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us and giving off a very enlightening conversation. As is tradition on the show, we like to give the guest the floor to say a few final words. It could be maybe some things that you forgot to mention on the show, or just whatever is going on with you right now, or just a nice excuse to shoot the breeze for a few minutes longer. So, Chris, thanks again, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely, thanks, Will. Thanks, Madeline. Just in closing, when I was going through school at Brock, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, what I wanted to get into, where I was going to end up. I was looking for the right opportunity with the right people. It so happened that I got placed at an internship at Maple Leaf Sports, and that was my opportunity, right? And when you're given an opportunity, and for me, when I was given an opportunity like this within MLSE, getting in the door was one thing, but then proving myself and building trust, building those relationships, that was the next job, right? I see a lot of people that enter into organizations, and when they get the job, they think, okay, I'm good. Well, no, that's your starting point, right? So building that trust, building those relationships. I did a 4-month internship, and then I was done in December, and I'd realized at that point I really wanted to get a job at MLSE, and I needed to figure out a way to break through and make sure that I was going to continue to stay on the radar for an opportunity that might come forward. I continued to volunteer. I drove an hour and a half from Brock to Toronto. I volunteered at every Raptors game from January until April. I kept in close contact with the people that I was working with. They saw me around the rink. And when an opportunity came about for an entry-level role, it was there for me, right? And I won the job interview, and ever since I've been working through MLSE. I've had a great career in our partnerships group and learned a ton through that. Ticketing, community relations, most aspects of sales and marketing I've worked within. I've helped launch franchises or relaunch franchises. And I've taken every step along the way as a bit of a learning journey as well. So, taking advantage of those opportunities when they're in front of you, I think is something that's really important. So it's okay to go out and chase your dreams, but once you get there, recognize that there's more chasing to do and to go after it. Setting yourself apart from your competition, whether, you take that athlete mindset into the workforce, that's something that's going to be really important as well, right? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you set yourself apart? All these different things, factor into, your career along the way. So, if there's a few things today that you can take away from this session, great. Hopefully there's a few things you learned. I don't have all the answers by any means. And like I said earlier, I'm learning, we're all learning along the way. It's a journey. So take a few things from each person that you hear from, and you'll be better off. A former boss of mine, Richard Petty, who I'm going to be bringing into my class later on, he talks about packing your gym bag, right? And what are all the tools? What are all the things that you have in your gym bag that you can unpack at various points along the way, right? What do you need to approach certain situations, and what do you have in your gym bag? What have you learned along the way that you can reference back to, or those people that you could rely on, right? So again, there's a bit of a long-winded answer, Will, but a few tidbits that some of the students that listen might see some value in. So listen, thanks for having me. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and congrats for doing the podcast and keeping the Sport Management Club going and building the social and all the communication around it. So thank you.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again.